Dan.
So we can start here shortly.
So
Got
Karen,
everything.
there you are, Karen. I'm like, where's Karen? Oops.
Sure, everything is set up. All right. Then
So have we, let me know when we're starting, Karen.
everything is open. I think everyone is just signing in. I believe everybody but Jennifer is present. But you have quorum if you're ready to open up the meeting.
Let's wait a few minutes. I know Jennifer was intending to come.
Okay.
While we're waiting for her, I'll just welcome all the participants. Welcome everybody. This is the Fayetteville, the Village of Fayetteville Planning Board meeting for our December, for the month of December. December 6th meeting. And the board is here. We're waiting for one board member to join us, and we'll just give it a few more moments to see if she can jump on and join us. We have a relatively manageable agenda tonight with 3 items on the agenda plus an approval of meeting minutes. So I think we can afford a few minutes for Jennifer. She had indicated that she was definitely going to join us tonight.
Correct.
Give her one more minute. All right, well, she must be having a really good dinner or something. I don't know. Why don't we get started? Thank you all for joining us tonight. The first item on our agenda is Thorpe Chiropractic, and is either Mr. Manning or some other representative from Thorpe Chiropractic here with us tonight?
I just elevated, where did he go? There we go.
See,
Dean Petro, I think, is representing Sarah Patrick for this application.
wonderful. Is that Mr. or Ms. Petro? I don't have a visual, so I can't tell.
Dean, you should be able to present your application, and you just need to unmute.
Can you hear me now?
There you
Yes.
go. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Thank you for coming tonight. You have an application before the board for, I believe it's site plan approval for
Correct.
212 Highbridge Street. If you want to give us a summary of, I've read your application. I believe all the other board members have as well. If you just want to give us a summary of your intention for the site plan review and for your business, that'd be great. Or for your client's business, if it's not you specifically.
It was an insurance office, which will now be Thorpe Chiropractic, which is just moving from Genesee Street into the 212 building.
Okay, so you indicate that there are no changes being made either internally or externally to the building, as well as I looked at the site, and it looks as if there are no changes to the parking area, and you're not adding any more parking, right?
We're not adding any more parking. I believe that there's going to be a permit pulled to do some additional treatment rooms to frame those
Okay.
out within the office itself.
Okay. Board members, do you have any questions for this application?
The rest of the building is the same type of use? Medical offices?
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see any issue with anything.
Neither do I.
Yeah, I don't either. Jennifer, you just joined us. Thank you. We're just started reviewing the Thorpe Chiropractic site plan application.
Yep, sorry to be late.
It's okay.
I agree with what was just said about the use being consistent.
Okay. So my understanding of this application, I would characterize it as a type 2 under seeker type 2 action. Board members, if you guys agree, or if someone agrees and wants to make a motion, well, no, if you agree that it's type 2 action, I think that we're cured for any seeker review.
I agree.
Any questions on that characterization? You'll agree it's type 2?
I agree.
Then does anybody have a motion to accept the site plan as submitted?
Motion to accept the site plan as submitted?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you all very much. And Ms. Petro, your experience over Zoom with the Fayetteville Planning Board has ended.
Oh, perfect. That was very fun and easy. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
I appreciate you coming, well, not coming out, but joining us over Zoom. So thank you very much and good luck.
For making it so easy. Take care.
You're very
Need a
welcome.
code officer for permit.
Absolutely. Yep.
Thank you.
All right.
You're welcome.
Thank
Have
you
a good
very
night.
much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda is for Deviant Dance Studio. I believe that's the title of it. Yeah, Deviant Dance Studio. Do we have a representative here tonight for that application?
Yep, I just brought in Lisa Price, who is the applicant for that.
Welcome, Lisa.
Hi.
Hi. We've all read your site plan application. We understand that it is intending to focus on this, what I'm going to call this side west area of the Fred Astaire Dance Studio.
Yeah, there we go.
There.
Can
Hi.
you hear me? Hi.
Yes.
Sorry about that.
That's quite okay. So if you want to give us a summary of what's going on, that'd be great.
Yeah. So we are a grassroots dance company that we specialize in beginner classes for specifically adults only. We started our business in 2018. We have been on the west side of Syracuse, and we're looking to move into this new dance space in Fayetteville. I live in Manlius, so it's time to just come back to the east side.
That's great. That's great. I see from your dance studio that you're going to make some minor modifications, interior modifications with a new dance floor, maybe a few mirrors appropriate to a dance studio. But I don't see any need for any exterior modifications to the parking lot or anything like that. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, there's already a subfloor there. It was already used as a dance studio, so it was great. There's really not much that I would need to do. And nothing in the exterior of the property is beautiful. So there's nothing that needs to be done.
Okay. And your hours of operation are
So we are a dance and fitness studio. So we will be open early mornings for like before work until probably about 11. And then a couple of classes like 5:30, 6:45, that kind of thing. I do occasionally will have like a private party or a private session, but those are always done before 10 p.m.
Okay.
Typically,
Okay.
yeah.
Any questions from other board members?
It sounds like no signage. Is that what I'm hearing? Just to be clear on that.
Yeah, so I haven't, I kind of like have prioritized a lot of things and the sign isn't one of them.
Okay.
Just because it's the side of the building and there's
Mhm.
really no visibility on the street. So we'll work on that later, maybe.
Okay.
That's good.
Only one question. I see you're adding new flooring over existing, I think it's a subfloor.
Yeah.
That the section of subfloor you're adding that flooring in, that was previously part of the former dance studio, right?
Yeah, so the subflooring, dance studios, we have a subflooring for shock absorption, right? So it's this kind of like flooring that has give to it. And then we're just putting new Marley, which is like a vinyl flooring that's it's kind of like anti-slip for like dance shoes and stuff. And that's just being rolled on top of that subflooring.
Okay, but it was existing dance floor area that you're doing that in?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Mhm.
I have nothing else.
Okay, so similar to our first item on the agenda tonight, I think this item is also a type 2 action from seeker perspective and therefore doesn't warrant a seeker review. Does anybody on the board have any comments or want a discussion on that?
No.
All agree? Okay, if so, then can I get a motion to with respect to this site plan application?
I'll make a motion to,
Go ahead, Scott.
I'll make a motion, we recommend approval of the site plan as presented.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, board. And Ms. Price, thank you for coming, for joining us by Zoom tonight. And you've been I think it's you, right? You're the applicant.
Yes.
You've been approved. So
you.
welcome to the East Side. And I look forward to seeing how your dance studio does. I will tell my
Yeah.
daughter that there's a new gig in town.
Yeah. Is she over 18? Because that's
She-
only over 18.
Yep,
Okay.
no, Yeah,
Thank
she's
you
gonna
so
be
much.
30 soon. So
Oh, perfect.
yeah,
Wonderful.
all right.
Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Enjoy your
Enjoy
evening.
night. Bye.
All right, bye-bye. Okay, so that leads us to the third item on the agenda tonight, which is the Northwood Real Estate Ventures LLC. It's a new site plan and special use permit application for a familiar site at 547 East Genesee Street. Before we get started with the applicant, I'm going to read for all of those in attendance tonight. I'm going to read their letter that was sent to the Village of Fayetteville Planning Board and the Village of Fayetteville Zoning Board of Appeals with respect to their withdrawal of their prior application. So the letter reads, "To whom it may concern, despite repeated attempts to remediate and redevelop the contaminated and underutilized industrial property located at 547 East Genesee Street, the Village of Fayetteville continues to engage in tactics designed to kill any mixed-use redevelopment proposal that includes multifamily residential units, whether devoted to senior housing, assisted living, or otherwise. The issuance of a positive declaration and the alleged potentially large adverse impacts are speculative, illogical, and inconsistent with seeker determinations made by the village in connection with other applications for redevelopment, i.e. Friendly Honda, as well as prior applications for the referenced property. This action by the village has once again rendered the proposed remediation and redevelopment of the property unfeasible. As a result, Millstone Development is withdrawing all its pending applications for the redevelopment of 547 East Genesee Street. Specifically, this includes the following applications: the Village of Planning Board site plan approval, special permit approval, subdivision approval, Village of Fayetteville Zoning Board of Appeals, area variance for 56,000 square foot building, parentheses, 10,000 square foot maximum building size, close parentheses, area variance for a 40,000 square foot building, parentheses, 10,000 square foot maximum building, close parentheses, and a use variance for senior facility. Should you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. Thank you. Sincerely, Kathleen Bennett. I am reading this to those of you in attendance tonight because I think that the characterization by Ms. Bennett on behalf of her client, who is, I believe, Devin Dalpaz, is just very unfortunate. The characterization of the Village Planning Board and the Village Zoning Board of Appeals is unfortunate in that it strongly suggests that we are using tactics and illogic and are inconsistent in our review processes and our reasoning and rational thinking for all of the various applications that were before us on that particular matter. And I just disagree with her. I disagree with the client, and I find it very unfortunate that after 3 or 4 months of ghosting again of the two boards, disappearing, not communicating with the village, they decide to withdraw their application with such in such a tasteless manner. So that's my opinion, and you can make sure that gets recorded on the record.
I certainly agree. Jane, may I add something to that? Actually, a few things.
Sure.
I found that letter to be completely appalling. The people on this board are volunteers who every year donate thousands of dollars worth of professional service and expertise because we care about the village, and we take our responsibilities extremely seriously to be fair, to be impartial, to uphold the regulations that we're being asked to review development proposals against. And I find that letter to be more than unfortunate. It's outright lies and falsehoods. I find it extremely offensive, and it's offensive to the whole process and to the people who participate in this board and people who come to these hearings and the many, many hours that have gone into trying to work with the applicant on this project. I'd like to add also that this mere suggestion that this board is anti-development is so untrue. And in fact, in the letter that was part of the actual application dated November 22nd, there was more of this type of rubbish thrown about, saying, let's see, multiple mixed-use development proposals for the property have met with resistance from the local officials, et cetera, et cetera. Not true. And I would add that offhand, I can think of 2 truly mixed-use projects that this board approved. One on Brookley, beautifully designed project that met all of the zoning regulations except for it needed a several foot, 2 or 3 foot height variance. And this board approved that. And that hasn't been built, unfortunately, in my opinion. Unfortunately, it's not been built. And then there was another project at the corner of High Bridge and East Genesee. And this board worked with the applicant over several years, starting back in 2005, and worked through many issues with the architect, et cetera. And really, I think everyone could agree, put them through their paces. And this board did eventually find that by working back and forth, we were able to come up with a project that we felt confident with our ethics and our standards and professionalism met those guidelines. And those were actually truly mixed use projects. It wasn't just uses, 3 different uses thrown onto a parcel. They were projects where there was an actual relationship. They were commercial on the ground floor, residential above. So I want to set that record straight. I could go on and on, but I won't. I've made my point.
Thank you, Jennifer. So with that, I don't know if any other board member has a response to that letter. If so, please go ahead and say something. If not, we can move on to the new application that's before us.
Nope, it was all set. Rather just move on.
Okay. All right. So I am assuming the applicant is here tonight. I have not looked at the applicant list, but Karen, did you? Kathleen
Matt's
is, it looks
on.
like
Matt's
Kathleen.
presenting along with, he had indicated James Valentine and Kathleen Bennett, and Matt, I don't see Matt Lester signed in, so I don't have him.
Yeah, Matt is on travels, so maybe he can't connect. I have not touched base with him today, but I know he is on the West Coast right now, so.
Okay, so you're doing the presentation of the application, correct?
Yes, myself, Kathleen, Jim Valentine is my colleague, and he's listening and taking notes for me as we're presenting. So with that, I got a brief introduction, and if I can afterwards, I'll share my screen. I find on these virtual meetings, it's helpful to kind of put up the graphics and do a little quick PowerPoint so we can kind of go back through this. But we're here before you tonight representing Northwoods Real Estate Ventures. This is a new client with a new approach to the development at 547 Genesee Street East. Some things and some players might be familiar, like myself and the site tenant. But this is a new application and brings many positive benefits to this industrial zone property. The premise of this new approach started during a planning discussion that Chairperson Rice and Vice Chair Reisman were a party to back last wintertime. During an alternative project discussion, it was mentioned, what about renovating the existing structure? And we did, prior to this, pose this to the tenant team and the project team, and they were very resistant. This alternative appeared favorable at that point in time last winter with Chair Rice and Vice Chair Reisman.
Matt, right away, I am going to stop you. Do not even try to pin this on something that I approved or that Mr. Reisman approved way back when we had a general discussion on general issues, on general concepts. So we are not tied, just for the record, I am not tied to this proposal in any way, shape, or form.
Understood.
And I'm assuming Dan feels the same way as I do. So please,
100%.
no need to make a reference back to any time that we met, because it's had no relevance to what's being presented today.
Understood. So during that lapse of time from the summertime, the last time we were before you, and more recently, the entire project team, during the preparation of the draft EIS, they felt uncertainty regarding to that project. Regards to what was mentioned here earlier, 3 different pieces, and the fact that each of those projects were considered new buildings with major zoning variances and a lot of issues. So that project was withdrawn. This new application is for the renovation and restoration of the existing vacant and deteriorated structure. So with that, I'd like to kind of share my screen and kind of move forward, go through a brief presentation, if I'm allowed to do so. We kind of talk about the project itself. I think I got it. All right. So hopefully you guys can all see the start of this PowerPoint. I just got to slide something out of the way. So cover page of that project in preparation of, hold on, get over here. The project team. So the owner is and has been consistent for a long time, FUBU Environmental Services. Eric Garnett is now the managing executive of the owner team. The developer, Northwood Real Estate Ventures, Anthony Gizzi and Matt Lester. Project attorney, Bon Shonican King, Kathleen Bennett, who is with us tonight. And project engineer, myself, Matt Naparella. And with me tonight is James Valentine. Project location, we're all familiar, east side of the village off of Genesee Street East, sitting in the industrial zone property located on the eastern limits of the village. The existing conditions of that property, recent drone and aerial photography, and this is a picture from this summer from the opposite side of Genesee Street East, looking at the existing structure as it appears today. The existing property is inclusive of 32 acres. It goes back and inclusive of Bishop's Brook. The front portion of that area is zoned industrial. The rear portion of that property is in zoned residential. The existing building area that the existing building encompasses is 137,000 square feet. That equates to about 3.1 acres. The total impervious area that exists today, following the limits of pavement surfaces and inclusive of the building, is about 7.54 acres. Fayetteville zoning, the subject site is within the industrial district, which is 17.8 acres. The residential portion, which I explained, is the north piece, is R1 district. That encompasses about 15 acres. The proposed rehabilitation and reuse project is entirely within the industrial district. We do not encroach in the R1 zone. The retail use that is proposed within the limits of that existing building is allowed by right in district, the I district, with a site plan and special use permit. By Article 187-14A of the Fayetteville Zoning Code allows for the continuation of a non-conforming structure. Non-conforming structures may also be repaired and maintained and even altered as long as a future use is allowed by code. Example of this is the retail use is an allowed use in the industrial district. Structure is defined as anything constructed on the ground or attachment to something having location on the ground. So therefore, the renovation of the existing 137,000 square feet former Accurate Dye industrial structure may be rehabilitated and restored into a 56,500 square foot retail grocer by right with a site plan and special permit from the planning board. So the proposed development, I'll get to the graphic in a second. It is a retail use, it is a grocer. The building area is 56,550 square feet. That's a 59% reduction in building size compared to where it is today. The proposed impervious area, the total impervious area is 6.4 acres. That amounts to a 15% reduction in the site impervious area, remembering that the existing impervious area is 7.5 acres. There will be an increase in building and pavement setbacks to the adjoining property lines. So on the east, the structure setback currently is 28 feet. To the east, the proposed structure will be 325 feet from the easterly property line. On the west, the existing structure is 77 feet from the property line. In the proposed, the structure will be 100 feet from the property line. It's the existing pavement or the impervious surface setbacks. Today, the east setback is 4.3 feet. In the final developed condition, the proposed pavement will be 23 feet away. On the west side, the existing pavement's 8 feet, 8.5 feet. Under the proposed condition, the pavement will be 46.8 feet. Beyond that, the existing structure will be renovated to have a new building facade to improve the site aesthetics within the village. There'll be pedestrian and bike accessibility that was kind of talked about during previous applications. There'll be improved landscaping and as well significant environmental cleanup associated with the development. So that in a pictorial sense, and I'll just quickly, this shows the entire piece, but just for sake of reviewing, I've blown this up. So this red line, the red limits, is the location of the existing building. So you follow that red limit line, the renovation project of that structure will be entirely within the footprint of the existing building. It is encompassed within it. Portions of the foundation, portions of the concrete slab, portions of that structure will remain, thus classifying it as a renovation and restoration project. The light dashed line that is shown, and it kind of follows the property line concurrent with Circle K, but this dashed line shows the limits of the existing pavement extents. And short of a piece that we're showing in the northeast corner, we are encompassed in totally within that existing impervious surface. So when we take a look at reclaiming some of the pavement surface that exists, and the add of impervious surface that kind of gets to a more functional piece to the north, there is a reduction of impervious surface from what there is today to the future. We talked about pedestrian and bike access, and if I can get this to blow up, zoom in a little bit. The access will include a dedicated pedestrian route that will have a 12-foot section that'll be dedicated to bikes and pedestrians. So that route will be a separate dedicated route with segregated landscaping, allowing direct access to the grocer, setting aside bike racks and accessibility. This as well will be on the east side, a sidewalk passage, and breaking up the pavement will be a landscape strip to allow access coming from the east side. So greatly improving the pedestrian access to the site. On the north side of the property, the developer is proposing to dedicate that entire section of the R1 zone to the village if they deem it acceptable. Approximately 15 acres will be dedicated to the village for presumably expansion of Coulter Park that sits here off to the northeast. That would increase Coulter Park from 3 acres to 18 acres, essentially providing 500% increase in Coulter Park, and as well providing significant buffers to the residential areas and environmental buffers to Bishop's Brook. So protecting that area and providing buffers and such for the neighbors and for the environment. So with that, that's our presentation of this new application. Kathleen Bennett is with us as well to answer comments and questions. We feel that with this, and there is no variances needed. There is no need to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals. We are working within the code limits and to within what is allowed based on a site plan and special permit review of the planning board. So I don't know if you want me to leave these graphics up or you want me to stop sharing for now. We can have a discussion.
You can leave them up for now, Matt.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know, board members, does anybody have a question for Matt? I have a question for Matt then. Matt, I heard you say that your renovation and restoration of the existing building is consistent because there are going to be portions of its existing foundation that will remain. What else? Will other aspects of the building remain? If so, what are they?
So a structural engineer has not gone through the entire building, but there are portions along column lines and along the foundation, like this north wall is frankly structurally in pretty good shape. We have to compare that to what the elevations will be. But certainly there are column posts within this very large buildings and column lines that we're looking to maintain. Due to other configurations, there'll be some portions along the west side that are able to be included. But for the most part, we're looking at minimal impact to the slab, but and portions of the foundation. But in other areas, it will be the size of that structure will be reduced. And there will be those temporary impacts to convert that piece of that structure into the site amenities as shown, parking areas, landscape areas, and other things. But where this tan shape will be, we're going to rehabilitate that structure as much as possible.
So where that tan shape is, it suggests to me that the exterior walls of the existing building will not be included, that they will be knocked down. And new exterior walls will be built for your
Correct.
proposed grocery store.
Correct.
So how is that a renovation?
Again, following the village, and then maybe Kathleen can jump in here, following the definition of a structure by village code. We feel we've met that, and it has been vetted through village code officer and village attorney, and they have agreed with our approach.
So then you're telling me that the village code officer has agreed to your definition of structure and your definition of renovation?
No, the village's definition by code, not our definition.
The village's definition of structure by code in its code, and the village's, the code has a definition for renovation?
The code has a definition for alteration, and your code provisions provide that non-conforming structures can be increased. It has no definition of increase, but alteration is defined as an increase. So those two terms are synonymous. And so if an alteration is permitted, then this is an alteration of an existing non-conforming structure by your code.
It's a very interesting interpretation. This may very well end up going to the ZBA for for final interpretation, because I'm not sure at this point that I agree with you. And Matt in his presentation, of course, didn't use the word alteration. He said renovation and restoration. So I'm just curious how you define what you're proposing here. I may not be understanding what you're proposing, but the way this looks, it looks like you're going to build your building inside. You just are going to keep the flooring and maybe one wall and then knock down the rest of the building. And that's considered a renovation and restoration. And according to Kathleen, that's acceptable under our code.
Well, and again, Code Officer Mike Jones was discussed about the program, and that the foundation walls are defined as structure.
I don't question that, but anyway, we're not going to get into debate over this tonight. I'm just I'm voicing my initial reservation in your interpretation of our code. Maybe I'm voicing a reservation of our code officer's interpretation of our code.
And what the code provides is in 187-14 subsection A.
Yep, I am very familiar with it.
Lawful non-conforming lots, structures, and uses may continue to be used, repaired, and maintained. So certainly this would be considered a repair in part.
Whoa. This is a repair? What are you repairing?
Well, we're remediating it, which constitutes a repair.
You're remediating it?
It's making it better.
We're
cleaning it up, and we're only removing the parts of the building that are no longer needed.
Okay.
I mean, it doesn't say, the code doesn't say that you can't do that.
The code doesn't say that you can do that.
It allows for alterations.
I don't disagree that there's a definition for alterations. Like I said, we're not going to debate this tonight. I'm just telling you that my initial reaction to your interpretation of our code is that I'm not necessarily in agreement of that. And that's just me. I mean, you got a whole board here. So I find that interesting. I don't know if board members, if you have any questions initially for tonight.
I had the same exact reaction that you did, Jane. I think this requires a lot more study and analysis.
I guess my only question would be on the, I'm sure it's been thought of, but has there been any thought to the loading docks being on the I guess the north side of the building? Or is this pretty much what's being proposed?
I guess, Dan, once we get into the fine details, we certainly can go back to the grocer tenant and talk about, what is potential and what is possible. This is what is being proposed, so that existing structure walls, as much as possible, can be used for this definition and to work the building without having a variance.
Okay.
Okay.
Questions from attendees? There's someone that's raised their hand raised.
Well, I just have one more comment on behalf of the applicant. I mean, with all due respect to the planning board, the planning board isn't an interpretive body. It doesn't
That's right.
have the power or authority to interpret the code. So if the code officer interprets the code a certain way, and the attorney agrees, then that's the interpretation. It really isn't for the planning board to question that. The planning board does not have the authority to do that.
We don't have a question. We don't have the authority. I take your comment. I receive your comment and we'll give it some consideration. I understand that our responsibility is not to interpret the code. That much I will agree with. Whether we have the authority to challenge the code officer's interpretation or not is something that I will take into consideration. If we have a question by one person who's taken the time out of their evening to attend this meeting tonight, I'd be happy to hear that question. I don't want to hear a long opinion, but I would entertain a question.
Jane, I have a question.
Sure, Joanne, go ahead.
I think Matt.
I have a question.
All right, so let's stick with the board first. Go ahead, Joanne.
I think Matt mentioned that it had or had not, I wasn't sure, a structural report at this point. I would be interested to see if there are other structural walls inside there. Maybe it was added on to over the years, but are the structural walls currently around the perimeter of the building, or are there some on the internal section of the building when you do that structural review, if you haven't done so already?
Yes, Jane?
I'm sorry, is that
Go ahead,
Mike?
Mike.
Hey, Jane. Yeah, it's Mike. My initial review is based on non-conforming structure and what you can do with it and what you can't.
Right,
There's nothing in the code that says you can't make it smaller. It
that's
says
right,
an increase is different, but
that's right.
the facts are yet to come out on the structure and what part of the structure you're actually using. So if they're using, the foundation within the foundation, I guess we still need to go on a fact-finding mission at this point. This is basically initial site plan
Okay,
demonstration. So let's look at the facts and review it accordingly.
yeah, and just for information for everybody who's attending tonight, if you do get to the code, if you didn't already, you could go to section 187 of our code. Subsection 14 talks about non-conforming uses, non-conforming structures, and non-conforming lots. And then there is definitely a distinction made between non-conforming uses and non-conforming structures and lots. And if a legally non-conforming use is abandoned or not used for a year or more, then it can't revert back to its old use. But no such thing applies to a legally non-conforming structure or lot. They just stay legally non-conforming for an eternity. And there are very specific standards, I guess, that apply if you're going to expand a legally non-conforming structure. But the code is definitely silent when it comes to contracting or taking away portions of a legally non-conforming structure. So that's why we had the earlier debate over what's an alteration, what's a renovation, what's a restoration, what's a rehabilitation, what's just simply demolishing a building. And as Mike mentioned, this structure is definitely a legally non-conforming structure on this lot. I don't know if the lot's legally non-conforming or not, but the structure is. So that's just information for those in attendance tonight who are not part of the applicant's team. There was another point point that the applicant has put forth tonight, which we're not going to solve tonight, but it's their recommended characterization of this type of project under seeker review. And the applicant is recommending that this be considered, I think you're recommending a type 2 characterization.
Well, Jane, if I could just mention that, I mean, I don't really think this is a type 2 action. I mean, it is a change in the use. My point with noting that in my letter is, that there is a recognition when you're doing rehabilitation or reconstruction of existing structures or replacement of existing structures, that even if you're making them larger or more modern or changing them to meet code, that barring, being near a park, right, it would be a type 2 action that wouldn't have any significant adverse environmental impacts. And the portion of this property that is adjacent to the park, is not being developed and is being proposed to be dedicated to the village. So it was simply just to make a point that when you're talking about, altering existing structures, rehabilitating existing structures, that there is a recognition, by the DEC and the seeker regulations that there is no significant impact associated with that because there's something already there and you're just changing what's there. So that was kind of my point with that.
I appreciate your reiteration of your point, and not sure I'm going to agree with it. So there's other things happening. First of all, whether I agree with your characterization of this being a renovation, rehabilitation of this structure is point number one. I don't agree with that, but let's assume it is. Maybe that's correct. But the problem there is that we have a brand new use on this site that's been absolutely quiet for some time. So that fact in and of itself does not, in my opinion, lend itself to be a type 2. So we have some of our own investigation to do with respect to that decision, which needs to be made pretty much at the outset of this entire application process. So we have more to investigate before we're ready to make that decision. And because the application is for site plan review and special use permit, there is no other board involved right now. So you're stuck with us. I can't ask the ZBA to be lead agency, which I would do in a heartbeat if I could. But it's before this board, and so we will be very professional in our approach. We are not going to use tactics and other devious kind of motivations to address your application. We work straightforward and are upfront and forthright with all applicants as well as all members who take time out of their evenings to attend our meetings, all members of our community. So any board members, any more questions? Well, if we don't have, I think, Karen, do we still have someone a participant who has their hand raised or?
No.
No, or Tom
Yes.
does?
Yes, Tom, waiting to.
Yeah, sorry, this is Tom. I just
Tom, could you
have a
please
question.
introduce yourself in terms of where you live and your, if you're a citizen of Fayetteville?
I live in Brookside. I am a citizen of Fayetteville.
Great, thank you.
I just, I don't think I don't think we need to maintain any illusions about whether this is a complete reconstruction. I don't think there's any question about that. I mean, I think they might as well take, if there's a pile of rebar left over, they can put it in a memorial to the store. But I mean, this is going to be a complete reconstruction. My question is more, what are the, if there's not going to be a separate review, what are the plans for the additional 18 acres of Coulter Park? Is there a traffic control plan going into and out of the park? And also what's sort of on the menu there? I mean, there's a lot of, the park is really nice, but I wonder if there's additional amenities that might be offered with this additional 18 acres of property, if that's what's going to happen.
Thank you for that question, Tom. I don't think we have any of the answers for your questions tonight, but it's certainly something that can be taken into consideration as we continue reviewing this application. The site plan itself is not complete right now. It's very much at a preliminary stage. So there's lots of questions to be asked and answered as we move forward. Okay. Certainly we'll take the park into consideration. So if we don't have any other questions specifically
Sure.
from the board, then I think that at this stage that if you don't have anything new to present by the applicant, since the board doesn't have questions, I don't think we need to repeat what you've already presented. And if you don't have anything new, then I think that that concludes our session tonight on this application.
Jane, I have a quick one. I know there are a lot of bigger items to deal with, but this I always think it's best to talk about things early that you see, even if it doesn't go any farther. We've had this issue often with buildings in the village. We like to have the fronts facing the street. There aren't really any examples of buildings that face any other direction unless it's part of a development that has something else that it's facing. So for me, it's important that no matter what the size of the building or where it sits on the lot, that the face is forward. I also agree with Dan about loading docks. We need to be careful about light and sound for our neighborhoods. So I just raise those issues right now so that they're not neglected as we move forward if it continues to move forward.
I agree with that. With the other project, let me back up. I think maybe there was an argument with the previous proposal that the entranceway facing in was maybe sort of trying to have a relationship with another building or something on the site, but now this is the only building on the site. And we don't have, as Joanne pointed out, we don't have this sort of Dutch colonial precedent. It's very anti-village streetscape. It's actually anti-urban to have the side of a building fronting on the street. So I think that's a big issue, especially since it necessarily loads the loading fronting to the neighbor's side, as opposed to the back or the north portion of the property, which is totally uninhabited and will remain as such. I mean, it's much, much further away, the nearest residential uses to the northern portion of the property than to the western facade. I think that's a completely pivotal item. And I think it's all being driven by wanting to have parking that's right in front of the building, which is also anti-village commercial design guidelines.
Is there any proposal with respect to traffic management? Matt, you didn't even get into
Well,
it, so I don't know if you're.
well, no, we
if
didn't
you're-
get into the traffic mainly because the DOT has reviewed the TIS in the past. This is a less of a impact than the 3 building program. The mitigation that was proposed and accepted by DOT still remains at play as far as a signalized entry and the center turn lane from the signal going west to Fayetteville Commons as a mitigative element that DOT has agreed to for the development, as well as the location of the entry to form a cross intersection with Tracy's, and for any future potential, if it ever is evolved and happens through the Tracy property, that's something that DOT has talked about for years to try to help the village center with the 5 intersections or 6 intersections associated with Salt Springs Road. If that will ever come about, who knows? But the location of the signal was predicated by DOT, was vetted and discussed at length 2 years ago. So this program, although the TIS it has not been updated, it will be. But the proposed impact and improvements will be consistent to that center turn lane and a signalized entry. And it has been agreed to already by DOT. So the entry and circulation and pedestrian access and such, as was shown on that plan that you guys have seen, both provide vehicular, truck, and pedestrian separation, so that we're keeping the big trucks from the pedestrian vehicles. We're keeping the bikes and pedestrians away from the vehicles as much as we can. So we feel that, we're meeting those particular needs of those different users of the facility. The other component DOT talked about was providing access to Circle K to kind of give them signalized access for those peak hours of people trying to make that left turn into Circle K and bottling up the traffic during the PM peak. So a lot of things, although we didn't specifically talk and address it, it has been vetted before, and it's consistent with this program as well.
Okay.
I guess while I have the floor, Mike talked about, going and continuing this structural review and such. So I guess what I'm looking at is next steps and where we need to go from here to assist the village in addressing those zoning questions and helping Mike understand what the program is. And I would, like to have the permission to talk to Mike as soon as earlier tomorrow to try to set up a meeting within the building and work on some layout and let him know what our program is. And again, it's still final architectural and structural pieces will come about, but I think that'll help the village. And I'm assuming if we get a further detailed report from Mike, that will help the planning board in this decision process. I'm taking that as a tasker for next meeting, unless you certainly our objective here is to keep moving forward. So we understand there's with a site plan application, there's some pieces that we still owe you, far as final grading, stormwater reports and such, of which we are fully intended on making submittal to the village for the next meeting, as well as this assisting the code review piece.
Yeah, so as far as next steps, I mean, there's a lot missing right now. So yeah, there's a lot on your plate. You've heard a couple board members mention their concern with the orientation of the building. And all we saw tonight is that you're going to tuck this building somewhere in the back corner of the existing building. And we have no other image giving us a relationship of your new structure to the street. So information in that regard is going to be extremely impactful, and you've heard people's comments and concerns, so I'm not going to repeat them. And you've heard my comments and concerns about your characterization, the applicant's characterization of this as a renovation and rehabilitation of an existing building. So I'll do my due diligence. You do what you need to do, and we'll see you next month, unless you choose not to show, which is not uncommon on your end. So it'd be nice if you give everybody a heads up if you choose not to show again.
Yes, ma'am.
Unless there's any other questions or comments from the board, I think that concludes the review of this application, and we'll move on to our other business tonight, which is discussing our meeting minutes from last month. So thank you, Matt. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And if we don't talk, have a good holiday, everybody.
Thank you. You too. Enjoy your holidays. Okay, so we have our meeting minutes from November. Would anybody like to have a discussion of those meeting minutes? Do we have anything to discuss?
I think I'm going to recuse myself because I wasn't at the meeting.
Right.
I was at 2 different planning board meetings that night.
Yeah, you were busy.
Back to back.
Yeah. Scott, I recall that you had made some recommended edits.
I did. I
yeah.
did. I see them for the most part. The one thing that wasn't added, and I don't think it would have come up in the recording, is when there's a discussion about the average number of cars that are in that queue at any given time.
Right.
Is between the operator and the people behind them, and there's
Right.
no way that was going to be heard.
You're right, it wasn't a direct conversation, but based on your recommendation.
I'm not even sure
I
how much
did-
of it was in English, but
I did include it to some extent. It may not have been in the same spot, but there was reference made as you requested.
okay.
I don't have a copy with me at the moment.
I saw the first part about what it holds. I just missed the average number that they have. I think she said was like 2 or 3 at most.
She did say
Actually,
that.
specifically 3 to 4. I did.
Yeah. But I'm not sure that would have come through as a discussion kind of behind the scenes. I thought that was an important part, but if it wasn't heard in the recording, kind of we missed
I
it.
still think it's okay to have in our minutes.
It is. Okay.
Recordings aren't going to always pick up, or sometimes the recording is a little jumbled. So
Okay.
I heard it, Scott. I heard.
Was added. I'm trying to recall where, but I did make reference to that.
So you added that comment to the meeting minutes, Karen?
Yes, on page 2. When asked, the restaurant owner said at the busiest, there may be 3 to 4 cars in queue.
I don't know if this is happening to everybody else, Karen, but you're really fading in and out for me.
All right, there must be a problem with my computer's audio. I'm not moving at all.
I'm sure you're not.
But on page 2, there is a reference under when you review the criteria for special use permits. There were a number of points noted, and it was included there.
I must have just not printed off the updated one. I must just have the wrong one in front of me. Okay. Does somebody else see that in there? I'm just not seeing. I must have printed the wrong one.
Yeah, I think you're looking at the one that was their first edition. Well, we know that you want that added. Karen's indicating that she did add it, so I think it's a
Right
fair.
here.
Yeah.
Oh, here you go.
3 to
Right.
4 cars. There it is. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So
Good.
over here
Wonderful.
is where you mentioned about the, even though there wasn't a proper engineer plan, it appears to have good flow. There's 2 lanes, there's queue space. And then it was later in the conversation, there was that sorry buyer reference to 3 or 4 cars in queue seems to be the most they actually have.
Okay, good, thank you.
Do we have a motion to accept the minutes as revised?
I'll
I'll
make
make a motion.
All right, so Joanne, you make the motion. Scott, do you
I'm
second?
second. I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, so we have Michaela Clary Hammerstedt who has her hand raised. I don't know if Karen, if she can unmute herself or if you can unmute her and
Yep.
Hi, this is Michaela. I had raised my hand during the discussion with the project proposal. So that was kind of more for him, but I was just wondering at this stage, do they have to go into more detail about what they have to do with remediation relative to the DEC? I know that's been on the table in the past. So if that's going to be part of this proposal, should it be discussed earlier on?
Yes, Michaela, there will need to be some understanding of any remediation needs specifically with respect to the structure. So there's a lot to be discussed yet with respect to the 547 application. It was very, very unclear tonight how much of the structure was actually going to be rehabilitated, how is it going to be rehabilitated, and so on and so on. So there's just a lot of details there. And yes, the remediation of that structure and the surrounding site will need to be addressed as well.
Gotcha. And yeah, it would have been nice to hear if they had any thoughts about it too. So I guess next meeting, maybe.
Yeah, I think it's premature at this point. That's why I didn't jump into that discussion tonight. As you heard, there wasn't a lot of information provided with respect to exactly how they're going to go about this. So
Totally.
Yep.
Well, thank you. For
You're
hearing
welcome.
my question. Have a
You're
good night.
welcome. You too. Have a good night. I don't see any other hands raised. And so I think those are also the 2 questions in the Q&A. So I think we're good. Anything else, board? I don't know. We have next meeting is January 3rd. Oof.
Have a conflict besides Jennifer?
I'm sorry. I heard conflict because
I have no idea what's going on here. Does anyone else have a conflict with that date?
other than Jennifer, right? Jennifer is not going to have returned yet. I'll be in town. Wow, coming fast. Everyone else, you're here. As far as we know, everybody's here. So
Yep.
looks like it
right
can,
now.
it's, yeah, right. It sounds good. Okay. Well, I guess that's it. So thank you all for tonight. Thank you very much for adjusting last minute, but I think Karen, you told me about a particular exposure to COVID over the weekend was at the Village Hall. I got a call from someone else who has to quarantine because they were exposed at some other event. And I just think the bottom line is that it's, you know, it's a holiday season. We're all gathering and having a good time and it's spreading. So be careful, stay healthy. And I'm assuming, Karen, we can continue meeting over Zoom until, I don't know when. Is this?
Yeah, I mean, as far as I know that ruling still stands, that we have the option.
Okay.
So do you want to plan on doing that for the January 3rd?
I don't know. What does the board think?
I think you can always plan on it, and if things are different, we can change like we did tonight in a short notice.
I think it's easy.
Plan on Zoom, just so it's set up.
I think it's easier to plan on Zoom. That's what I was going to say. And you know, there's many factors then. You've not just have public health factor, but you've got, you know, bad nights with weather and so forth. So I think we stick with Zoom.
Okay.
That's fine.
So we'll plan on same date Zoom. Motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All righty.
Thank you.
All right,
Have a
thank
great
you
holiday,
all.
everybody.
everybody.